guest with me for now, especially with all this mess going on about the election. And by the way, the elections are not over. Relax. It's not over. I have with me Ron Coleman. He is a commercial litigator, and a partner at the Dillon Law Group. And I wanted to talk to him about all this stuff that's happening in the media with the Great White Hope, Donald Trump, and the elections, all that. Ron, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good morning, Jesse. How are you?
All is well, sir. Let me ask, Ron, how long have you been involved in politics? You've been paying attention to it. You've been involved.
As long as I can remember. I grew up in a sort of a political family. I was involved. I was in college Republicans when I was in school. I was in the Federalist Society when I was in law school. And although there have been high peaks and low peaks, but I've always been pretty involved in politics.
Nice. And what does a commercial litigator do?
I go into court if I have to go into court, and I help people avoid going to court if they have business disputes. That's mainly what I do.
Oh.
A lot of the work I do focuses on trademarks and unfair competition. I'm doing a lot of defamation work these days, but basically it has to do with representing people in legal disputes and increasingly in free speech and free exercise of religion disputes. And the last few months I've been involved in election law as well.
Nice. And so the president is being attacked by the Democrats and the media for not conceding the election. What do you say about that?
Well, obviously, there's no obligation on someone who is, regardless of the outcome of an election. I mean, Hillary Clinton never conceded the election.
Right.
Al Gore took back his concession in the election. There's no obligation to concede. There's also no legal significance of conceding, except that when you concede, what you are telling your people is to stop any kind of challenge. But that, as you were saying a couple of seconds ago, there's lots to challenge here. This election is not over. The counting's not over. Things are changing radically from almost minute to minute in the last couple of days.
Yeah. I noticed that for the first time in my life, I've never seen a time when the media, the liberals, the Democrats, and others have tried to outright steal an election. And if they're allowed to do this, then the Republican would never get back in again, because this is like a test run. And if they can get away with it, it's just going to get worse, and the people will suffer for it as well. Am I wrong by that?
You're not wrong, but maybe you're wrong about one thing. There have been many test runs. All we're doing is seeing incremental increases in how big of a batch they're running.
Yeah.
There's no question that 2018 was a run like this. 2016, they probably were experimenting with a lot of the same systems. Until now, they usually would focus these things on just certain states. The idea that they would now use the system to actually shut down states until they can manipulate them in order to throw the entire election all at once on this scale, that's somewhat new, and that's the reason that they're getting caught at it. There's no question, however, that they have been working on this stuff for a long time.
I talk to folks in my family, and I talk to people that on the radio in different places. A lot of people don't believe that large-scale voter fraud is possible. And I want you to tell them how easy it is to corrupt our election process. How easy is that?
Well, it's never been easier, unfortunately. There are two main things going on right now. One of them is that there was a gigantic move towards mail-in ballots in Democrat-run states using COVID as an excuse. And what that did was made it is well established that mail-in ballots are the easiest kind of ballot to falsify. It's been done at a massive, massive scale. They've not only been falsified in terms of using fake ballots of people who are not living anymore, ballots of people who no longer live in the place where they were received, multiple ballots from the same person, but they've actually literally manufactured ballots. This is at this point not really. There's no serious question about this, and what they've also done is made it impossible to utilize the traditional tools that are done by poll in the poll watching process, where members of the opposite party are allowed to see what's going on in terms of counting and having the ability to challenge ballots. So now you can't challenge the ballots. You can stand in the same room, look at them with binoculars, which is useless, of course, unless you're on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which you think you're a god, so you are omniscient, and you don't need to actually be on top of the ballots anyway. But traditionally, when you look at it, in order to challenge a ballot, you need to see what's on it and what it says. So in these states, it's been impossible for observers in any meaningful way to get in and observe. The numbers are preposterous in terms of turnout percentages for Biden. You have certain districts where tens of thousands of votes came in for Biden in one fell swoop and zero for Trump. That's statistically impossible. Even if every single person in that district or that ward is completely woke and they know what a bad, wicked guy Donald Trump is, someone's going to make a mistake. It is impossible for people not to have filled in one person, and not one person that'd be independent-minded enough to not to do every, they let teenagers vote, okay? You could be 18 years old. Every 18-year-old, does what his parents tell him. I'm not so sure. So that's the paper ballot piece. On the other part, we're learning more and more about serious questions about the software that's used to tabulate the votes. That is a work in progress. I'm getting a massive flood of information from statistics people, software people, people with insight into this, into Dominion, the company that runs the software. It's pretty scary.
Why is it hard for a lot of folks in this country to believe that voter fraud is possible? The voters, why is it hard for them to believe that that's possible?
It's cognitive dissonance. We're living in an environment where only a couple of years ago, even people like you and me, were used to trusting certain institutions.
Yeah.
And we knew that along the edge, there might be abuses and here and there might be an injustice, but you knew you could trust the Associated Press not to just lie, right? You knew that the FBI was there to prosecute crimes and that the same law should apply to everyone. So we knew about Hillary Clinton, but she was a single high-level person. And all right, stuff happens. But what has happened is that we've seen entire institutions that we've trusted for our entire lifetimes, guys our age who just grew up under, watching the FBI TV show and J. Edgar Hoover's going to take care of us. And these are the G-men and this is all the good stuff. All these institutions have been co-opted by a political party. But the thing we weren't really prepared for was that the election process would be part of that process as well.
Yeah. And
that you would have state attorneys general whose job it is to make sure that the law is followed in their states and that elections are run fairly. We never dreamed that those people would just lie or that they would call a recount or an audit something that's neither a recount nor an audit, as happened in Georgia. So we're not, even though a lot of people, even many of the people that you say don't believe this, who otherwise might agree with a lot of the things you and I are saying about the fact that New York Times is not a reliable source for news, that NBC is not a reliable source. People are used to that, but their elections were sort of the holy grail of American society. Everyone knew there was cheating, but no one, here's the thing though, Jesse, if you can envision the fact that there's a little bit of cheating, then it's not difficult to understand that there could be a lot of cheating. And then it's just a matter that we're only negotiating on the price.
Yeah.
So once the people who are responsible for reporting and shedding light and causing transparency, all those other institutions, the press, the FBI, the Department of Justice, if they're not going to do their job, then why cheat a little when you can cheat a lot?
That's right. I remember there was a time when the AP, the Associated Press, would use the term illegal aliens. And when you say illegal alien, everybody clearly understood what it meant. But then they changed it and they stopped saying illegal aliens. Did that happen with the intent to deceive the people?
Deceive is maybe not quite the word, but rather it's to acculturate or to socialize. I don't mean in the sense of socialism, but to change the way things are viewed in order to achieve a political goal. The words that we use to describe things are extremely powerful. So, they took the position, which was entirely political, that the term illegal aliens was no longer an appropriate term because it was judgmental, that there was somehow a right to break the law to be an immigrant because everyone was claiming to be a refugee. That was just simply meant to achieve a political goal. Yeah, you're 100% right about that.
And so it's set up to dull the people to reality in order to deceive them that they may gain what they want.
The outcome is deceptive. There's no question about it. Yep.
Amazing. I noticed now, and you're right, when I was growing up, it's totally different than it is today. With the media, you trusted the media, you trusted the politicians. Somewhat. You knew that there was a chance they could be lying. But I noticed that the media and the politicians, especially the Democrats and liberals or socialists, whatever you want to call them, they outright lie to the people now. The governor of California came out the other day and said, "I'm sorry for not social distancing. I was caught at a restaurant and I shouldn't have done it," or something like that. I was outside. We had a dinner outside. Now we find out that the dinner was on the inside of the building. It's like they just lie to the people with no fear of being voted out or anything. Why is that?
Well, because the press basically covers for them, as they're not being put to it, and also because, look, if the first part of our discussion is true and elections are a joke, elections are rigged, then there's not going to be anyone getting voted out.
That's amazing.
Look, there are a lot of people who will vote for these politicians no matter what because it makes them feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
But there are also a lot of people who would vote against them, and their votes are being diluted, and people are very comfortable with that, and that's really a problem. That's really troubling.
Do you believe, as I do, that we should have term limit for government throughout the whole government, local, state, federal? It just should be term limit, and that
not only term limits for you, but term limits for your immediate family.
Yeah.
In other words, if you've been in office for 8 years, your son, daughter, or wife can't have that same office.
Yes.
For 10 years.
That makes sense.
Shouldn't be able to hand over. These political dynasties are a terrible thing for America. Extremely un-American. Think of all the people in public life who are prominent politicians or leaders in the media, which is the same thing. Just the people in the media get paid more over the table. Who have last names that are the names of people who were politicians when you and I were growing up or when we were in college.
Yeah.
It's, there's justice entitlement. Chelsea Clinton, goes over to, NBC and gets a, it wasn't NBC, but one of the networks, gets a $300,000 job doing basically nothing. These media companies are I can't stop media companies, which are private from
right.
doing that sort of thing. But in terms of term limits, absolutely. And I think, one of the first things Donald Trump did when he got to Washington was at least put some kind of controls over lobbying. But he's been so overwhelmed with the deep state, and the permanent government that it was a drop in the bucket.
I noticed that these politicians stay in so long, and when they are ready to leave, they do pass it on to a family member as though it's a private business. They were not a politician for the country, but they had a private business, and now they're retiring, and I'm just going to pass it on to my child. Right. That's insane.
Either the voters or this rigged voting system. And certainly the party system approves that. Remember in 1972, George McGovern became the Democratic nominee, and it was a disaster for the Democrats. They hated Richard Nixon, won in a gigantic landslide.
Yeah.
So they realized that democracy was a terrible idea for Democrats. So what they did is they have steadily rigged the system of winning nominations so that their nominations, especially for national office, are handled entirely in the back room with the illusion of primaries. I mean, the Democratic primary this year was entirely a fiction. It was a play.
Yeah.
The idea that these guys all folded on the same night after Joe Biden didn't even win that primary.
Right.
That was the funniest thing I ever saw in my life. And that they were all in on it. It was so pathetic. And Bernie folds like a cheap card table every time.
Yeah.
Big revolutionary. So it's a racket. It's a racket. And yes, rackets of crime families do tend to be hereditary. And this is basically a kind of crime family.
I read that you are a major supporter for the First Amendment, and I think the First Amendment and the Second is so important to us. And I saw in Michigan, Wayne County, where two Republicans were intimidated by the left, by them calling, because they couldn't agree on this, they couldn't certify the votes, right? And the Democrats intimidated them, and they agreed with them. Now they reversed that agreement. But if we lose the First and Second Amendment, it's over for us.
Right. I mean, I don't know if there was so much of a First Amendment issue over there. Intimidation is a very broad word. They threatened them. They outright threatened them.
Yes.
They threatened their families. And when they got to when they were able to be safe, then they have rescinded their votes, whatever that means. I mean, a lot of stuff here is completely we're in new territory. But the problem with the First Amendment is, as great as it is, the values that it was meant to impart to people that were supposed to go beyond what the government can and can't do, and which should apply to the general idea that campuses and classrooms and online forums should be open to debate, and that people should listen to what other people have to say, and they should, instead of shutting people down, they should find a way to demonstrate that their ideas are wrong. That's all gone out the window.
Yeah.
So the government, as of right now, can't, manage what's going on with deplatforming and censorship and the outright lying on Twitter. I mean, Twitter adds these messages onto, basically all conservative tweets about the election saying this is disputed. I mean, it's just propaganda. So without actually affecting the First Amendment itself, you can lose free speech in a million other ways. That's what's going on.
My final question for you, Ron, because I can go on and we're running out of time. I noticed that everything that's good is under attack, and the good seem to be caving in to the evil. Religion is under attack, white people under attack, men under attack, the family is under attack, the nuclear family, proper education is under attack. Why are the people who represent good giving in to the evil?
Because they're good. And they don't have the killer instinct.
Ron, hold that thought for me. I want you to complete that, and then I want you to give out your information. I got to take a quick break here.
Okay.
All right, thank you, man. Ron Coleman, folks, back in a moment. You should hear it. Oh. Ron Coleman is with me, commercial litigator and partner at the Dillon Law Group. Ron, tell the folks how to reach you, your website, or whatever you want to give out, because I don't want to run out of time.
Best way to find me is on Twitter. Just use @Ron Coleman, RONCOLEMAN, or just if someone just wants to Google Ron Coleman, attorney. There are a couple of, it's not the most uncommon lawyer name in the world, but there's only one who looks like me. I'm a lawyer in New York and New Jersey. I'm a partner with Harmeet Dillon in San Francisco. Very easy to find us, and we're happy to talk to people about their legal issues if they want us to. But, we're very involved in public issues, and we love to, to talk to people like you about the things that, we've been thinking about.
Right on. And so I asked just before the break, why is it that the good is allowing the evil to take over? Because when I was growing up, that was unheard of. It would not have happened. Why the good are allowing the evil to rule?
Well, when you're good-hearted, right, then you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. You assume that they're acting from sincere motives, the way you're acting from sincere motives. You assume when someone expresses pain that they're really feeling pain, and people don't necessarily appreciate the fact that there are people who will manipulate those instincts to do terrible things, and that's human mankind. That's the human history. The only reason Jesse. The only reason that evil doesn't triumph over good in this world is because God doesn't want it to.
Yeah.
Because by the plain old operation of nature, it would every time. If you look at, every evil regime seemed in its time to be completely unstoppable, whether it was the Persian Empire, the Roman Empire, the worst outrages of some of the European and Oriental rulers over time. They, who can stop Genghis Khan? Who can, but they're all gone. At the end of the day, good triumphs over evil because good does have an inherent power that comes from God, and it doesn't really add up. If there's one thing I would say that does add up, or that enables good to win, and that is that this God's seal is truth, and truth ultimately, and that's why there's this great emphasis on controlling the message and controlling the ability of people to express themselves. Truth is everything, and the bigger your conspiracy, the more you're going to have to worry about the truth coming out. The more people are going to know about what you're doing, the more moving parts you're going to have. Ultimately, truth is sort of like water; it finds its own level. That's the way God made the world, and that's why it's good. That's the only way it works out. But what you're getting at is, do people of goodwill and people who recognize what's good in this world and what's right and what's wrong have to stand up and hit back? We do. You're 100% right.
One last thing is, I have a text from the Bible Goku guy, and and he wanted me to ask you: is it true that the average person is the same way as these politicians? If they think they can get away with a lie or cheat, they would do it. People vote for the type of politicians that they are as a person. Is that true?
I think that's not true. I think politicians are unusually driven. They have egos that you and I can't even dream of. And they are, even though, yes, everyone has a little larceny in his heart. Everyone wants, even though most people, I think good people don't want something that they didn't earn or that isn't coming to them, that they didn't deserve. Politicians get very comfortable with that very fast in a way that only really among the world of thieves and hoods do you find that level of comfort with dishonesty. So yes, there are lots of people like politicians, but is the average person like it? No. But does the average person think, they rationalize, they find a way to vote for people that they know they can't trust? They do.
For me, I was thinking about Gavin Newsom again. If Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, truly believed that the Chinese virus is a major issue, would he have gone to that cafe and sat there with no mask, close to the people, enjoying himself? Would he have done that if he truly thought that the Chinese virus is a serious issue?
No, and neither would people who are worried about claim to be worried about the end of the world because of climate change be flying around in private jets.
Yeah,
I don't believe it for a second. It's just meant to organize the way we think and act, and to retain power for themselves.
Amazing. Final word, Ron. How should
Final word?
Yeah, let me just ask. Now the election is not over yet.
Correct.
The people who support the Great White Hope, Donald Trump, what should they be thinking and doing right now? How should they be acting?
They should not be listening to the mainstream press. They should find sources of information. And if following you on Twitter, that's good enough for me. But they're being lied to on a regular basis, and they need to start getting real information from objective sources, because what they've relied on their entire lives for information and news and analysis is a complete disinfo operation. It's a psyop. Who's running it? I don't know, but it's not good for them. It's not good for their souls. It's not good for the truth.
Are you going to celebrate Thanksgiving and Christmas despite the restrictions?
We do exactly what we do all the time. I mean, we Orthodox Jews have a holiday known as the Sabbath every Friday. We have as many family members as we want. We try to comply with the law, but when the law is taking away your liberty, then you have to take matters into your own hands sometimes.
That's right. It's hard living in New York right now. What's that like? My son lived there for a while. He finally got out of there. He moved to another state, and now having a good life.
Actually, I can see the New York skyline from the hill above next to my house. I go into New York for business if I really have to. Most of the court work that I do in New York, I do electronically from my desktop, right where I'm sitting right now. In New Jersey, it's much better. The governor here has backed off on a lot of the stricter, you know, restrictions that he's put into place as a dictator. And we, as his subjects, are grateful for that. New York State, however, is gotten worse and worse. And facts don't seem to matter. It's entirely political. It's about power, and no one seems to be prepared to stop him.
Amazing. Once again, Ron Coleman, how can people contact you?
At Ron Coleman on Twitter, or Google me, Ron Coleman, attorney, New Jersey, New York. They'll figure it out. It's me.
You're a smart man, Ron. We got to have you back.
Great talking to you. Thanks
You too. Good to meet you, too.
Same here.
All right, buddy. Amazing.